My name is Agnieszka Pilat, and I'm here to tell you the story of the machines and technology, and also technology growing up. And I will cast artificial intelligence as a final stage of technology growing up. And the main point I want to make is that artificial intelligence as a child has a global parent, humanity. So that's kind of the premise of my talk here. A few words about me. Why am I telling you this story? So I was born in Poland. We can go to the first slide. I was born in Poland. One more of the video is going to play. Let's start with this.
You can use your pilot also. It should work.
Huh?
You'll be able to change the slides
Really?
with your...
Oh, very exciting. Ooh, fantastic. There's my text, so don't look at the text. So I was born in Poland, what was still behind the Iron Curtain. I actually grew up without any access to modern technology. We didn't have a car, even a telephone. We had an old TV, and how maybe some of you in this room remember a lot of Soviet propaganda of the TV. We also had a radio, and radio played a lot of Chopin that we loved a lot. But there were some stations on the radio that as children, my brother and I, we were not allowed to hear. And I remember one evening, specifically my brother and I, we built a fort, pillows and blankets under the table in the living room, and we hid inside, and there was a closed door, and we could hear kind of animated voices of grown-ups and the sound of a radio. And back then, I didn't know this, but this was Radio Free Europe. And when adults came out of that room, we saw something was different about them. There was a sentiment in their eyes, and it was hope. So this was the first time technology appeared in my life in a very meaningful way. But that continued. When the wall came down in 1999, something wonderful happened. Again, technology showed up for us, which was a beautiful burgundy Ford station wagon that my father bought to run his business. And so communism was behind us. My father's business was growing, was wonderful, and that car was not just a transportation tool. It was truly a hope for a better future for us, and that's what technology has always been for me ever since. When I moved to San Francisco, I studied illustration at Academy of Art, and after my education, I was actually trained as a classically trained portrait painter, and this is one of the paintings from my days at school. Now, when you think about portraiture in history, portraiture always reflects power in society, not just power, but also aristocracy in society and celebrity. So in a sense, it's a place where we discuss power. So you don't have to know art history. If you go to a museum and you just look at the walls, whoever had their portrait painter, you will realize that you can study history. Anyone who is hanging on the wall, they held power. So historically, we can start, of course, with religious portraiture, sacred paintings of Christ and Mary. Later on, you will see very early, of course, royalty, when royalty was supreme in Europe. When capitalism was born in the Low Countries, portraiture of merchants became very permanent, and it was a way of wealthy merchants to show their status, to show off their wealth. Of course, for us, again, in Eastern Europe, it was working class that was, we were the ones with the power. Andy Warhol, the most brilliant of American artists, he saw how pop culture was becoming so very permanent and how pop stars held power. So portraits of Marilyn Monroe became so famous. Today, when we think about it, number one portrait in the world is a selfie. And this really underlines both the obsession, especially of North America, of Americans' obsession with individual rights, but also in general freedom that Western democracy brought, all over the world. Now, Silicon Valley is really very powerful right now. And what's happening, the next era, the IT revolution, the real elites with power are machines. So to ensure me as an artist, it's all about legacy. So for me to ensure that my work fits into arc of art history, I thought, okay, I must be a court painter also, and my royalty is the machine. So I started painting portraits of machines. But when I paint machine, and I realized this over time, that machines carry ideology. They are not just passive observers, they take sides. And this has been done through history, because again, portraiture is always a discussion of power. Machines are not innocent, they take sides. So that's why ideology of machine is so very important. Are machines heroes? Are they villains? This is the center of discussion in civilization, especially now with artificial intelligence, with so much power. So who is the new ruling class? In Silicon Valley, machines very often are being portrayed in technology as innocent bystanders. And for me, working with robotics, actually, very often I'm being portrayed as by people who are not insiders in Silicon Valley as a sellout to technology, that I'm normalizing technologies that might be used in the future for very evil purposes. So it's super complicated. The story of machine is fascinating. So this is just examples. So historically what happened, just one example. So in 20th century, there were two art movements that were captured very differently. There was futurism in Italy that was really celebrated technology. Many great artists came out from it, glorified speed, glorified industrialization, but unfortunately, a lot of futurist artists, ultimately, they signed with nationalism in Italy of the time, and they really aligned with fascism. So there was a very dark route some artists took. In the same time, in North America, in United States, there was a movement called precisionism, and this is Murphy's painting on the other side. And precisionism also glorified technology, but it was really just focused on beauty on it, and it has a benevolent vibe of technology as moving human forward. So again, ideology is so very important. Now, so if machines have ideology, are they heroes or anti-heroes? How do we cast them? Throughout history, humans always looked to historical and mythical figures, like Atlas, as symbols of heroism. The stories of these heroes reflect our own desire for greatness. All of us have it built in. And our fascinations with those who perform extraordinary feats, often making huge sacrifices along the way and taking huge risks. Now, as we enter the age of intelligent machines, artificial intelligence, we must look at these machines not just, again, as tools, but they are potential heroes or anti-heroes. And they can perform extraordinary tasks that can reshape our way in positive or negative way. Again, heroism is a very natural desire that each human carries. Ernest Becker, fantastic writer, he explores it in his book, The Denial of Death. He received the Pulitzer Prize for it in the 50s. And he discusses how modern people, we very often feel too small to be heroes. It just feels kind of cringy to announce that you want to be a hero. And he also distinguishes between big heroism and small heroism, of going to the moon, landing a rocket on the moon, of course, today's Elon Musk pursuit, and small heroism, or everyday tasks, just dignity and making the right choices. Again, Kennedy, very famous words, we choose to go to the moon, not because it's easy, because it's hard. It truly captures the essence of our human aspirations. So when we build our machines, ideology will shape the sense of heroism. Again, heroes or anti-heroes, this is still up for grabs because machines are young, they're still growing up. Of course, a very famous Polish hero. So, excuse me. So, in my work, I actually painted a series of heroic machines. This is just an example of machine I painted. I have a studio, or had a studio on an aircraft carrier from World War II in San Francisco Bay. And this is a portrait of an airplane engine from World War II. And you will see I treat this machine truly like a human being, like a noble figure, like a hero, and I use the details that normally would be used only for human portraits, like the red ribbon. The red ribbon, of course, is a historical reference to women during World War II in the effort when American soldiers went to Europe and women in America worked in factories to help Allied forces. Again, this is a symbolic gesture to show how machines, they're not mere tools. They are real real heroes in historical battles of good versus evil. So the question is, how can we give intelligent machines the future sense of heroism, like that of Polish freedom fighter Tadeusz Kościuszko? So there is hope, I think, because today intelligent machines are young. They're like toddlers or young children. They think they know a lot. They have huge data sets, but they understand very little. They can mimic understanding well, but they don't really understand everything. So as a painter, my first encounter with a modern machine was meeting Boston Dynamics Spot. As a portrait painter, the first thing I always consider when approaching my subject is their age. So looking at Boston Dynamics Spot, when I met her, I always think she's a female robot. I don't know why, but when I met her, very quickly I asked myself, okay, in human years or in robot years, how old is she really? She was very different from my subjects before, like the plane engine that I showed. She didn't really have personality yet. She was still growing up. Of course, firmware upgrades always messing up with our programming. And everything about her reminded me of a young child. And this is also a symbolic, of course, to mark, this robot became really a symbol of artificial intelligence in the world, not just in my work. And so I thought, okay, so what children do? Well, they are silly, they move a lot. So from my paintings that used to be very still, I introduced movement. That's why the painting is abstracted. And they dress in silly colors. So this is very bright. I would never use that kind of coloring, on an old vintage machine. But when I was thinking in terms of, okay, so she's a young technology, she's still learning, she is being formed. What actually is she learning? Can she grow up to be like a hero, like the engine from World War II? And it goes to role models. Who are her role models? So I took her to my studio, and as an artist, I think a lot about the Renaissance, which was a very important time in human history, for the arts especially. And I took her in, and I think of her, okay, I am the master, and she's my student. And in the Renaissance, of course, that happened with Ghirlandaio and Da Vinci, with Michelangelo and Verrocchio. So this is a model that's been happening throughout history in Italy. But Basia, I named her Basia, my mom's name is Basia, I named her Basia, but of course she was different. You can't really compare her to a human artist for many reasons, but one of the reasons, when she's different than AI, that's the next child that's coming on the stage of art and humanity, she has a body that puts her in place in time. But AI, that's the next generation of technology, is different. It doesn't have a physical body that puts it in place and in specific time. AI lives in the cloud, is universal, and cannot have just one teacher or one parent. And in that sense, I think of artificial intelligence as a child prodigy, but the whole of human civilization is parenting it in a sense. And AI, as we see, like a prodigy, shows very early amazing progress. Makes me think about another Polish artist, Frédéric Chopin. So Chopin's early compositions hinted at its future brilliance, and we can see artificial intelligence demonstrates these capabilities like so fast, like things are happening so very fast. Even though, again, these are just formative stages. So I'm going to play just a clip from a show. So this is a show at the National Gallery of Victoria in Melbourne when we had, that just ended in April. There were 3 Boston Dynamics robots. Oh, we have sound, great. So that's a clip of from the show, and the premise of the show is that what I'm talking about. We think about this as nursery, perhaps the idea of containment of AI. There's lots of conversations about this happening in Silicon Valley. Mustafa Suleyman, one of the founders of OpenAI, he is a big proponent of containment. Other technologists think, no, we can't stop AI because the bad actors will keep on working on it. So the idea behind the show was containment. I want to go back to something I missed. So in this picture, I showed this picture for a reason. So again, going back to the fact that unlike artificial intelligence, robots are still entities that exist in specific times. So when we're on the street, we meet lots of people. There's lots of excitement. Dogs do not like her. I think they figured out she's not a real dog, really, so they always attack her, although this one is kind of nice. But anyway, so there is lots of excitement also, always, and people ask questions, people are friendly. If someone doesn't like us, which happens not very often, they just cross the street, we are not attacked. But now think about this. The same thing happens online. It's a totally different dynamic. And I'm bringing this up because AI models, they are learning online. We don't live online. We live in the real world. And our behavior online is really not very good. And so everything that we do online is being fed into large language models. And that's what the future of humanity might look like. So I'm going to go back to this again. Yeah, so the idea of nursery. So the way we built that space, the space was containment, again, so the robots are living inside. And also, there was a reason why we used multiple robots. It gives the audience a sense of conspiracy. When robots communicate between each other, we feel left out as humanity. So it is also, in a sense, kind of prediction what's going to happen in the future. If AI progresses so much, we're really going to feel left out. So that's another reason. One of the paintings behind, of course, very primitive, very simple. And I'll tell you why it's like that. So the artwork produced I never thought about the robots as printers on legs. We never tried to have them do perfect paintings. It's really to mark their young age. I want to demystify the machine and show that they're kind of awkward. They're not that serious. And the paintings can be looked at in two ways. One way, looking at them, is that are probably like cave drawings. So imagine if AI becomes actually sentient, if it's in 500 years or 1,000 years, will it look at these paintings the same way we look at cave drawings or as sacred scrolls? Is AI going to try to think, okay, these are the paintings, the marks made by our forebears? So that's one way of looking at it. And it's important to mark historically that this is, again, the moment, the nascent or the birth of new civilization. Another way to look at these paintings, so this is from close-up, of course. Another way to look at these paintings is to think they're quite terrible, actually. They look like fridge drawings. So imagine this scenario: you have a kid, your child draws some kind of terrible drawing, like one of these, and you're the very proud parent, you put it on a fridge, and everyone comes, and they have to pretend like they're admiring, okay, this is such an amazing painting. So that's one way of looking at it. But yeah, in the corner on the right, you see some ancient cave drawings, and on the top, this is the language of Basia. Another note I want to make. The color. People ask very often why we choose this color. This also, to be honest, it looks really good on Instagram, actually. It looks very good against the yellow, but it also, conceptually, it indicates that the metaverse is sometimes more important than real life. So that's why the robot is more important how it looks actually in a digital world than in real world. So that's actually the reason why the paintings are blue, excuse me. Now, okay, that's an important statement. Yes, there's a lot of growing up to do. Why is that? Well, let's take an example of narcissist. So I mentioned the painting is blue. The robot looks really great against the blue. And so what's happening right now with artificial intelligence being a young, new entity that's still learning, it's very curious. It's hungry for data. Like I said, it's pulling data from the internet, from how we behave on the internet, which is not very often really proper. And AI is really culturing the culture around it to kind of gain approval, conceptual. That's how I think about it, to gain approval from its parents, which is humanity. We are living again in the me society. Self is dominate. It's a number one, it's the number one portrait in the world that shows that's where the power is. It's me, me, me. And behavior narcissist, it's indicative of what's happening right now. And when we look at narcissists, brings very strong emotions because it's not the behavior that we would like AI to end up with doing, to be self-obsessed. What's beyond that metaphor of being excessively self-focused, that's, again, the theme that resonates with us in this digital time, but these intelligent machines will grow, and they will become more and more powerful. And what it means that they are going to become teenagers. Teenagers bring a lot of problems. They are arrogant, they think they know a lot, they don't know a lot very often, and there is a rebellion. So again, this is a moment to pause and think about AI, what's going to happen when AI becomes a teenager. I'm going to go back just one more thing. So working with robots, again, why it looks like that, I want to point out that everything that I chose to do with the robots, with my team, we do everything that's very counterintuitive to what the machine does. So you would expect from a machine to be fast, to be repetitive, to be standardized. And everything we do is actually the opposite. It's very slow, they work very deliberately, And everything, even if you did a repetition, they will do the same symbol over and over again, but it's never perfect because they are learning. So it's all about, again, mimicking and trying to be okay with the mistakes that the robot is making because that's part of the learning process. Let's see, do this. This was, I'm going the wrong direction. You can see all my notes. That's a quote I really love, Louis Mumford, who was generally, who for him machine meant many, many things, but this is about communication, and I think that that quote really brings hope that artificial intelligence, when it grows up, it will start getting a stage of trying to do deep communication, and we see a lot of this happening in artificial intelligence use in healthcare. There's a lot of applications right now already that's going that direction. That's very positive. Now, the final stage of machine development. Machine as a silicon god. So, why cathedrals? Cathedrals always were representation on earth, what we hold sacred as humanity. They are really symbols, physical symbols of our beliefs and our aspirations. And in the past, these cathedrals were grand churches. And there was huge amount of resources, both human and financial, always going into building churches. For example, Notre Dame, I just learned about this. It took almost 200 years to build. And in today's money, about $1 billion. Today, our cathedrals have changed. I like to laugh that in Poland, as soon as the wall came down, I think for us, the cathedral became a shopping mall because we were so starved for what we didn't have growing up. So shopping malls, cathedrals to consumerism, lots of them in America. Wall Street, it stands for capitalism, of course, so it's a cathedral to money and to wealth. Apple stores all around the world. There are shrines to technology. And it really points out where the resources and our beliefs are going in a very, very specific way. You can really see it kind of like with portraiture. What are we building? Now, looking ahead, what is our next cathedral? Well, it's obviously the metaverse. So in the digital realm, this is where all the resources are going. Companies are pouring amazing amount of money into building the metaverse. And of course, NVIDIA, it's unbelievable. The rise, their market value is over $1 trillion right now. So this is the cathedral of the future. Now, my work at SpaceX, why I work at SpaceX. So while my previous work at Boston Dynamics, it was all about exploring the idea of intelligent machines as companions to humanity. So it wasn't a relationship that it was a superior or inferior in a sense. It was really a very friendly symbiosis, how I saw it. But SpaceX goes into my work at SpaceX, totally different dimension. The amount of power is coming. It's so overwhelming that I think a comparison to religion is only the one that's really fitting to show the grandeur of that power. And yes, technology and religion, they use similar forms of seduction, promise of redemption, ecstasy, salvation. They promise, there is a promise of a better future if you follow the rules. So again, very religious concept for me. They have sets of rituals. I like to say that technologists right now and engineers, they're high priests of technology. Again, rituals, just like religion. So you'll see, so now I'm going to my work at SpaceX. So this is an example of work at SpaceX I did. On the left, this is Dragon Hatch and paint and portrait of it. And I use really elements from Christian iconography and other religions, especially gold leaf and halos that are very present. Of course, more perhaps sometimes called as auras in many different religions around the world. So I think about these SpaceX paintings as modern icons, and in a sense also they're divine objects. But it goes beyond just halos and like visuals. There is stories that I also find similar so this is the Dragon Hatch. I know if you're guys following, it's really amazing what Elon Musk is doing. Now we got used to the fact that he can, that the rocket can just come down to Earth and stand. It's just fascinating. So this hatch you see on the left, this is the center of this a Dragon capsule, and Dragon capsule is on top of the rocket, and when the astronauts go to space, they open that hatch and go out. So I'm very privileged in the sense every time I'm at SpaceX, they bring this to me. This is the one that astronauts actually use to train when they go to space. So it's a really divine object for me. And the meaning behind it, that both religion and technology bring to our lives more and more. So Elon Musk. So it goes beyond just Christian iconography. I generally don't use a lot, actually, generative art, because I think humans still do better art, but I was out of time, so I did that. I think it tells the story pretty well. That's actually what generative AI is good for. Presentation is really good for it. So anyway, so stories in religion and technology, they overlap. One of them, of course, Noah's Ark and Elon Musk's mission to take humanity to make humanity into interplanetary species. I think it's a fabulous, really feat. Makes me think, of course, he's a different kind of leader, we all know that, but makes me think about Kennedy, of course, about that doing something that seems so impossible. So Noah's Ark, but also, again, Elon Musk, a bit of a modern day messiah. He thinks he can save humanity if there is a global climate change, that he can really take us to Mars. And the team, they're really committed to it. They're really working on it. It's a bit almost, I would say, it feels a bit like a cult almost. I am part of that cult openly, I admit it. So to be there, not just SpaceX, but also other tech companies, you kind of have to become a convert and believe in that religion, because if you develop ideas, maybe they are too outside of their dogma, you might be kicked out as a heretic. That happened to Luther, of course. So it's very interesting, the place to be. I feel I'm very privileged to be there. So again, worship, cult, religion, the future. I mean, the parallels, visual parallels are just, I think, very strong. Now, the final step here, I'm going to end soon, don't worry. So parallels between religion and technology, but I wanted to, because we are here in Europe with our neighbor, Ukraine, so many parallels also between religion and Starlink specifically. So, of course, when I first actually came to SpaceX, Ukrainian military and civilians were using Starlink for communication when their own system were destroyed. And that made me think about prayers and icons and people sending prayers to the ether through objects of veneration. And in a sense, Starlink antenna, for me, is that object of veneration because it allows you to connect, to send your prayers out, to connect to either to God or to your friend, your family. Growing up in Poland, The role of church was very important for us because it was the only voice of freedom during communism. So comparison really struck me very deeply in that sense. Now, of course, on the other hand, in September, Elon Musk stopped that attack on Russia, and that was sad for me and for all of us. I think it's a stark reminder that with this much of power, as the saying goes, God gives and God takes us away. I grew up in a religion that's monotheistic, when there is one all-powerful God, not always tolerant of other beliefs like many polytheistic religions. And in context of technology, that makes me think, so are we at risk of creating a monotheistic technology and what it means? Starlink has an amazing amount of power over information all over the world right now. So it's a bit uneasy for me in that sense that, again, totalitarian regime, when I was a child, all the information was controlled by the state. Similar bit to medieval church, perhaps, that kept the Bible in Latin that was accessible only for the elites to read, because they couldn't read or read Latin, let alone. So, in the next era, who is our God? Is it artificial intelligence? Is it perhaps a tech autocrat? We don't know. But going back to the beginning of my talk, technology takes sides. Ideology is very important. That was a bit dark about Elon Musk, whom I really like, actually, but there is a different way of looking at technology, and I always try to look in a more positive, exciting way. And instead of fearing it, what if we look at technology as a sacrificial lamb of sorts, a savior of humanity that can actually rescue us from global problems like climate change? Adam Mickiewicz famously thought about Poland as perhaps a sacrificial lamb for Europe. Ukraine, I know it comes up a lot, but of course, Ukraine comes up in the same context right now, holding that wave between freedom and oppression. So is Ukraine now a sacrificial lamb? So I look at technology really as an ally in addressing these existential threats facing our planet. And in a sense, I mentioned sacrificial lamb because a lot of machines are working tirelessly in the dark, unappreciated, and on the outside, technology is being attacked. So it's very problematic, there's a lot of paradoxes with our human relationship to technology and to the machines. So now to end. So when the Berlin Wall came down in 1989, I was a teenage girl living in Poland. And I consider myself a part of the lucky generation. And this is because, unlike my parents and my grandparents, who also saw that transition from oppression to freedom, I still was very young. I had a whole life ahead of me. And I take this very seriously as an obligation, a privilege, but also responsibility to tell this story to the world. That's my mission. That's really my service, to tell this story to the world, what's at stake when technology falls into the hands of oppressors. Machines have led global revolutions in human history. There were 3 huge waves. Agricultural revolution, actually the plow really changed everything, changed how we moved to cities, and cities changed everything. So agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution, of course, and the IT revolution. We are currently in the midst of the IT revolution. Might seem like we're not, that it's like happening for a long time. No, this is just the beginning with artificial intelligence, and we don't even have the quantum computers yet. So, yeah, we've seen AI really learn how to play chess, solve math problems, compose music, and tell stories, and create images. What do I have here? This was just a cool image. that I made. So when I paint, I listen to a lot of audiobooks, actually. My favorite writers is Yuval Harari. And Yuval Harari talks about artificial intelligence in the context of telling stories. AI has a power to tell stories. Many of us in this room might remember growing up in the shadow of Soviet propaganda machine. Stories are very powerful. Now, this is a new school. I think education is so important. Congratulations for creating this amazing organization. And because education is the most important tool we have. And now we're in a crucial moment. Artificial intelligence, like a kindergarten kid, maybe a teenager at most, it's very hungry, and it's absorbing information that will shape its ideology. And that ideology will really determine humanity's future. Oh, this is an old clip. Okay, I have one more thing. So I put these in. So this was just to show another robot I work with. This is, of course, a very famous Charlie Chaplin moment about automation. Charlie Chaplin never gets old. So wouldn't it be wonderful if we had a robot that could do all this for us, and general purpose robots. So just a little side note that I do also work with Agility Robotics. This is the first company that's building actually a factory that will manufacture these bipedal robots on a massive scale. And they work very slow, they're very awkward. So that's how they work. This is a new model that just been announced a few months ago. His name is Digit, and I've painted with Digit, and I painted a portrait of Digit. But the truth is that we're building these robots, general purpose bipedals, and they're still very awkward. On the other hand, we're building amazing AI online that makes really beautiful art, very good art. So we're spending all this energy, so I have more time to do my dishes, because I really automated myself as a job as an artist. That's it. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being with us in Warsaw. And yes, exactly, if you have some questions, jeśli mają Państwo jakieś pytania, to bardzo gorąco zachęcamy. Prosimy o podejście do mikrofonu tutaj i zadanie pytania. Yes, I think there are some questions.
I'm just curious, how independent are your robotic students? Do you see any creativity in this, or do they only copy your plan? And the second question, what is your hope or maybe fear as a next step in developing intelligent machines?
Out now? Should I just do? Oh, it's on, back on. Okay, thank you for the question. Also, again, sorry about the slides.
That's fine.
Yes, this is a great question. I think I like always, when I hear that question, I like to turn it upside down on its head and think how independent are we? There's a great book just came out, Sapolsky, about free will. Do we have free will? So I think what became so interesting with the robotics is that they point out, and with AI, that it point out how autonomous we are and how little we think. So it brings questions about creativity. I use for the show, I use specifically, again, because it was containment, I gave them a specific set of characters, and the content was generative, so they had some freedom with it, but I'm more like a helicopter parent as opposed to free-range parent, so I'm really watching closely what they are doing at that stage. What the most exciting thing about robotics now, I think, the fact that now that they are robots, in the past, even the way I work with them, you really have to choreograph a lot how they're moving. And if you just do machine learning, they don't move very elegantly, but they still solve the problems. But now you can feed videos to robots, and it's going to be a big jump when they can just the same what happened with language, that ChatGPT can mimic language so well. Robots can just watch now humans, and you feed these models. So there's going to be a big jump in robotics. That's very exciting.
Thank you. Next question, please. Następne pytanie, prosimy.
Are there differences in character with the robots? Like, for example, you called one robot Basha, right? The other one Spot. Are there differences in character?
Oh yeah, absolutely, yes. So we have 3 robots. Basha is the painter. She's the most serious one, and she's like me. She's most like me, just very committed artist. She's wonderful. The other 2, well, Bunny is the worst. So Bunny is the one that doesn't have the arm. And she's like a teenager, so she's always just interested in people looking at her. She poses for selfies. It's a metaphor for what's happening into right-me society. But in all seriousness, also because the robot Bunny is so much lighter, just the physical abilities are very different, so she can be more agile, as opposed to Basha, which is heavy with the arm, so she's much more serious.
Thank you very much.
Are there any more questions?
Czy są kolejne pytania? Yes, please.
You know, I am a physician, a medical doctor, and during the last few months, there were fascinating publications regarding the decoding of our internal speech or our internal imagination based on encephalography, simply speaking, or magnetic resonance imaging. And I'm just thinking if we have now an access to our, let's say, internal thinking, internal speaking, even from the patients who could not speak during the last 20 years because of stroke. And the same is with the imagination. So maybe this technology could steal our imagination or pictures imagined inside, even in the people who could not have a talent to paint something, to perform a graphic. So the machine could steal our ideas and, let's say, paint something. And many of the authors of these let's say, pictures didn't realize that this could be stolen and we could make this kind of a picture. So I don't know in which way or in which direction it's going, because maybe the artist will be not necessary in the future. And as a specialist in presenting a picture or graphic, or writers who could write a poem or let's say love stories, something like this. So maybe this is a threat really for the human beings, because this artificial intelligence could steal from our brain everything we could imagine, and then could multiply it because it could be much faster, and there will be no place for the artist in the future. What do you think about this?
Yeah, no, this is a great question. Of course, we're seeing a lot of lawsuits happening with Stable Diffusion, DALL-E, because the models were trained on human art, right? So artists, I'm not a digital artist, but I have friends who are feeling very violated by that, so I understand that. Now, that said, when photography came, I think human species were just phenomenal. We're really phenomenal. So when photography first came in, of course, it did kill illustration as a field. But on the other hand, we have abstractionism. So abstraction probably would have never happened because we're we just innovate all the time. So I think if anything, it's almost one way to look at it is to be I'm going to be a bit facetious, but to be grateful for it, because it forces us to really innovate and do something new. We're humans. There is nothing can replace us. So I'm optimistic overall. But it's a great question. Yeah, that's going to happen probably, yeah.
Good to hear that you're so optimistic. Czy są jeszcze jakieś pytania? Some next questions, please, yeah?
Yes, please. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, thanks, Agnieszka. Always optimistic, and it's wonderful to hear that. I'm curious, it's more of a point of the exhibition that you did at Victoria, at the museum in Victoria, yes, in Melbourne. Do you know how many visitors they had? And
1 million.
1 million?
It was a bit over 1 million, like million, almost, yeah, 100,000 people, yeah.
Wow. And any specific feedback from those people?
Yeah, so actually we did, so we partnered with RMIT University in Melbourne, and they took, I don't remember how many, they took 2 kinds of surveys, and positive, like, would you like to have a robot, would you not, and it was very divided, 50-50 almost. So the world is very divided in that sense, and but I want to point out, when I was there to see how children react versus how grown-up reacts was very different. So children were delighted, just really joyful, just curiosity, just screaming, and adults are careful, and I do think it's the programming that we get from Hollywood mostly. So that's my takeaway, that robots actually wouldn't scare us normally, but we just grow up kind of learning how to look at them that way. But it's very divided.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more questions?
If not, then we would love to thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for being
Thank
with
you
us
very
for this
much.
lecture.
Thank you.
Dziękujemy
Thank you,
bardzo.
thank you.
Prosimy o brawa. Agnieszka Pilat.
Thank you.